Super. You said it was what number? 115.
Got it figured out, Cedric.
While we're doing this, may I just perfect the record on one thing? Your Honor?
We're back on. All defendants present represented by counsel. Go ahead.
During my cross-examination of Investigator Marcy, who is still here in the courtroom, I had begun to direct him to transcript page 24, line 19 through 25. And that drew an objection. I can't recall the basis of the objection. And I handed the transcript of that section to the court, and then the court sustained the objection. I'm good with all that. All I want to do now is read for the record what it was I was going to have. Otherwise, it's not in the record. So I just want to proffer what I was going to.
In the record.
Pardon me?
The transcript's in the record.
Transcript's in the record.
Oh, it is? Okay. Very good. So,
It's page and line.
pardon me?
Let's just go page and line.
Yeah, it's page 24, lines 19 through 25. Thank you.
I'm ready to go.
All right. All right. We got everybody. All right. Witness on stand. Let's go get the panel.
All rise with the jury. Please be seated.
All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We are ready to continue with the evidence in the case. Mr. Sheffield.
We were talking earlier about the video, and you were helping us kind of understand what you were looking at,
Yes, sir.
what you were interpreting in the video. I just wanted to make sure that I understood a couple of points from that. Starting here right at around 2:08:25 is when we see Mr. Arbery come into the frame.
Yes, sir.
And what we understand about this is that he's walking.
Based on his gait, yes, sir.
Okay. He's walking up to 220 Satilla Shores, the house under construction,
Yes, sir.
and now he's standing in the yard with his hands on his hips. Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. He's looking around, and then he goes into the house.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, in a minute, we're going to see Matt Albenzi come up into the frame. And is it your understanding, there we see Mr. Arbery now walking into the larger garage. Do you see where he does that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. In a minute, we're going to see Matt Albenzi come up here at the top of the screen, and he's going to kind of make an appearance there between those two trees, and that's where he makes his phone call to 911. That's what you understand.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when he does that, he is literally standing right in front of 220 Satilla Shores.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you ever go and speak with Mr. Albenzi?
Yes, sir.
You did. And so from Mr. Albenzi, you have learned kind of that he was there to make this 911 call, that he had spotted Mr. Arbery come up to the house when he was in his yard chipping wood. Is that right?
I don't recall what he was doing as far as the reference in chipping wood.
Objection. This calls for hearsay. Mr. Albenzi has not testified yet, so what you've learned from your interview with him at this point in time would be hearsay.
Well, I will offer for the truth, Your Honor, just to inform this officer as he's moving through his investigation. And
Objection. That
making
workaround
decisions.
hearsay is not a workaround hearsay. It's hearsay.
Still there, so I understand Mr. Albenzi, though, will be available as a witness.
Yes, Judge.
Okay, well, it's sustained, but let's move forward. Go ahead.
Well, I'm not offering it for the truth, so it's not hearsay. So I'm not sure if you're allowing me to proceed under that umbrella. Okay, very good. Okay, thanks. So as we're seeing the video, essentially, let me get the one with the house. 220 Satilla Shores is located right here. Do you see that?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. And essentially, 220 Satilla Shores comes to the intersection of Jones Road and Satilla Shores. You see that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Now that we got the house number down, let me go to the bigger map. And what we understand, what you understand, is that Mr. Albenzi lives down here on Jones Road, and he simply walked down to the corner of Jones and Satilla,
Yes, sir.
where 220 Satilla is located.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Come down Jones to Satilla. Okay. And that's where he stands and makes his phone call to 911.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, in a moment, we're going to see Mr. Arbery run out of the house. Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And in a moment, what we're going to see is that Mr. Albenzi is actually going to come further out into the street in front of 220 Satilla.
Yes, sir.
Right? And then, as we see him now, he's going to walk down the street towards Greg McMichael's home,
Yes, sir.
which is further up Satilla Drive. So 220's here. You know it goes by twos. So 22, 24, 26, 28, 30. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So he's walking from in front of 220 up into the direction of Greg McMichael's house.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And when he does that, and we see it through another video, Mr. Diego's video that you were able to collect, when he comes up closer to 230, he goes like this.
Yes, sir.
See when he does that?
Yes, sir.
And indicating that way.
Yes, sir.
And you understand, do you not, that he was communicating to Greg McMichael?
Objection. Calls for speculation as to what anyone was doing. And for this officer to speculate that Mr. Albenzi is communicating to anyone, speculation is the objection. Relevancy is also the objection.
The speculation, it would be, he was told it, so he wouldn't have to speculate about it, and it's relevant because it's a communicative signal to Greg McMichael, who he interviewed about what he did that day and why he did it.
Objection. Counsel's testifying, Your Honor.
I'm not.
It's sustained. We've got Mr. McMichael's testimony on what he thought happened.
Right.
So it's sustained.
Okay.
You're asking this witness to speculate on it.
Okay. Greg McMichael told you that he observed Albenzi.
I don't recall that. Do we have a? Do you have a page for? Do you have a page
No,
for
I'm
this
just
one?
asking you.
No, sir. I don't recall
I
that.
don't recall that. Okay, that's fair. All right, let me move to another area lastly. we talked briefly, and I'm going to get just back on track with it. One of the things that you said about this data system that collects calls is that a person will call in with a problem, and that will get a call label.
Yes, sir.
One of those call labels is suspicious person.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and a suspicious person label can really mean a lot of things in
Yes,
your
sir.
experience.
Yes, sir.
If a homeowner is calling about a suspicious person, that could be somebody who's on their property, a trespasser, right?
Yes, sir.
Or somebody that they're concerned about where they are and what they're doing, essentially.
Yes, sir.
Whether that turns into a break-in or a burglary or an assault or whatever it turns into later, a lot of things begin with suspicious persons.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you attempt to determine the number of those types of calls for Satilla Shores at any point in time?
I'm sorry. Objection.
Well, let's see where this did. If you did, then let's figure out
Yeah,
in what
that's all I'm asking.
context.
Thank you. Did you attempt to determine the number of suspicious persons calls in the neighborhood?
Working with the GBI, we ran reports, and then with me I have a list of all the calls for a time period in Satilla Shores.
And is that something you did pursuant to your relationship or working with the GBI?
The list here is from the prosecutor in this case. This particular work I have here was a request from her that we brought up earlier today.
Okay. Okay. Other than what the state has asked you to do here, did you take, after speaking with Greg McMichael, take it upon yourself to look up, or were you asked to look up the number of suspicious calls?
For Greg, I looked up calls related specifically to 220 Satilla.
Okay.
And then when the GBI was looking for data, I assisted the case agent with getting CAD reports, written reports, and handed them over to the GBI. I don't have those stats
That's okay. I
before
just
me.
wondered if that's something that you did.
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay, very good. So you were assisting, and that was continuing into the months after February 23rd.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Similarly, you could get calls for specific things like a burglary. That could be literally the type of a call that you get.
Yes, sir.
Or you could get a trespass call.
Yes, sir.
You could get something called extra watch.
Yes, sir.
Extra watch is when the police are asked to come out and kind of have a presence in the neighborhood.
Yes, sir. It can be a broad spectrum of a whole neighborhood needs some extra watch, or a particular residence. They're asking for a little bit more law enforcement riding by, getting out, talking to a store clerk, stuff like that.
To try to show presence in the neighborhood to deter crime,
Yes, sir.
and to try to follow up on some maybe suspicious activity that people have noted in the neighborhood over a period of time.
It wouldn't be as much of a follow-up if you ran into something great. Otherwise, it's just extra presence.
A problem person, that's another type of call that you get.
Yes, sir.
That's just dealing with somebody saying, I got a person out here and it's causing me a problem, whatever that problem might be.
Yes, sir.
That's an obvious one. Citizen assist. Citizen assist, is that another way of a person saying, I just need help with something that's happening on my property, in my home?
Could be something simple as some paperwork to a flat tire, anything that law enforcement helps out somebody that's not criminal in nature. And then we have some other specific ones like a bin inspection, so that would be citizen assist, but more specified. So
Okay.
It's pretty broad.
All right. If you're going to do a neighborhood patrol, that means that you have taken it upon yourself to drive and patrol a neighborhood. Is that right? Or is that something that you're asked to do by citizens?
It's mixed. So part of what we do is riding through neighborhoods, businesses to be included. We can call out that we did. We would call it 1081 was the 10 code for it, and it would just mean I'm at this location at this time checking this business or this neighborhood, and it could be for a particular house, it could be for an entire neighborhood, an entire shopping center. And it's just basically a date and time stamp. This officer was there, didn't see anything unusual.
Okay, but it would be at least documented that the officer was out patrolling a particular street
Yes, sir.
or a particular neighborhood looking for criminal activity or trying to resolve criminal activity in some way.
Yes, sir. So while that's part of the patrol duties as a routine, this would be an affirmative. everybody else over here.
Very good, very good. Did you take it upon yourself to look into, I asked you about suspicious persons, but the other types of things, did you pull the call data for a period of time for those types of calls as well?
Yeah, like we talked about for the GBI, yes, and that was for all-encompassing,
Okay.
all calls.
And was that at the direction of the GBI? Like, hey, we want to know what's going on in this neighborhood?
Investigator Lowry was working at it,
Okay.
and I'm good at navigating our system, so I began helping him, and then they were handed over to the GBI.
Very good. Okay, thank you. One moment, please, Your Honor. I don't have anything further. Thank you. There may be more questions, though.
Sir.
Okay.
No questions.
No questions. I think we just want to have a film papers.
Any redirect from the state?
Yes, Judge. All right. So I want to ask you, Investigator Marcy, directing your attention to page 44 of the transcript.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I think you indicated that we're about to dump everything that's ever happened in that neighborhood and see if, because Mr. McMichael's telling you all about these break-ins that are happening, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you dump everything in that neighborhood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What'd you find?
I have the list from Spillman. So the overall numbers I have here include time past the incident through May 25th of 2020. So saying like however many follow-ups per se would be inaccurate to the time frame of 1/1 of 19 to 2/23 of 20. But I do have a breakdown on the actual reports that an officer took a report for. And I have those by date, and I can be a little more accurate on that if that's a concern.
All right,
Dates.
so I just want to be real clear about
ma'am.
this. When you say this on the 23rd of February, 2020,
Yes, ma'am.
did you, in February or March or April of 2020, go back and do what you said you were going to do by looking at the neighborhood at that time?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. All right. So subsequently then, did you and I have a conversation where I asked you to go ahead and pull that so you could look at it again to refresh your recollection for this case?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, in preparation for your testimony.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And at this point in time, did you go through and look at all of those reports to see if Mr. Ahmaud Arbery was a suspect in any case, and I want to be real narrow about this, in any case in Satilla Shores from January 1st of 2019 through February 23rd of 20?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, was he a suspect in any of these cases?
No, ma'am.
All right. Also directing your attention to page 44.
Yes, ma'am.
defense counsel asked you about when Gregory McMichael started saying, you know, if he had turned around and said, hey man, you know, I'm Joe, I live around the corner, I'm just out running, it would have been a whole different ballgame, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So, Mr. Gregory McMichael expected that this man would stop for him.
Objection. She's asking him to get into the mind of Greg McMichael.
All right. At the end of that, he indicated that Mr. Arbery had no intention of stopping.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did he ever explain why he believed, I mean, talk about Greg McMichael, did he ever explain to you why he believed Mr. Arbery had to stop for he and his son?
No, ma'am.
All right. I'm going to direct your attention to page 39 now.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I'm going to talk about lines 14 through 16. All right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. I'm going to have you directly quote, and my thought is all the way through earlier.
Okay. Mr. Greg McMichael, and I'm quoting him, he stated, and my thought is he's going after a weapon, you know, because, you know, if he had had a weapon, he'd have probably used it earlier.
Okay. Now, is this in context for the fact that he went up and took Mr. Arbery's arm out from underneath him after he'd fallen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So he's talking about he's laying face down, his right arm's under his body, and Mr. McMichael's thought is he's going after a weapon. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But then he follows up with, you know, if he had a weapon, he'd have probably used it earlier, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we've got a probably there, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, let's take a look at this. And here's what I'm going to have you do. You're going to put the page back in. I'm going to have you go through it all. So you might want to flip it.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you go ahead and go to page number 7.
Okay.
All right, so you saw Mr. Sheffield with his list of all that stuff, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so page number 7, when we're looking at lines 6 through 7, we talked about Mr. McMichael saying Diego had this guy, you know, the video, breaking into or being or wandering around in this house, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we've got all three of these kinds of things going on with wandering in the house, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And then the next page, Mr. Hogue came up and he talked about, in the middle, on line 17.
Yes, ma'am.
So he's talking about numerous entering autos and break-ins, and then he said, logic tells you that this guy may be the one that's doing it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we've got a may be the one. And he's talking about logic here.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so logic, he may be doing it. Then moving forward, we've got page 11.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so he's talking about lines 15, 16. So now we've got a missing weapon and the possibility in my mind that the guy's been breaking in down the road there.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we got a possibility. And then you asked him, possibility, and that's your subjective opinion.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then he says, well, that's just a hunch.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So now we have a hunch. And then going to the next page, you at the top it says, well, we've got that intuition, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And he agrees with you, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we've got intuition. then the next page, 13. All right. You went ahead and asked him specifically. So you see this guy out today, and he's hauling. What are your thoughts?
Yes, ma'am.
And he's thinking he's either done something, or somebody's chasing him, or, maybe somebody drove up and found him in their house.
Yes, ma'am.
Or drove up to that particular house he likes to go into over and over again.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so we have like speculation on 4 different things in that sentence, right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and take you to page 24 again.
Okay.
All right. So middle of the page, line 9. You asked him, is he picking up anything, going through anything?
Yes, ma'am.
What is the quote Mr. McMichael says at that point?
Quoting Mr. McMichael, he says, not that I recall, I don't think the guy has actually stolen anything out of there, or if he did, it was early on in this process.
Okay, so if he did.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Not knowledge that he did, it's if he did.
Yes, ma'am.
So we got an if. Plus we've got an I don't think the guy's actually stolen anything out of there.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And then he says he keeps going back over there, and then he goes, plus we've had numerous entering autos. And then that's when he says, this guy would be a prime suspect.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so now we've got prime suspect. But you found that Mr. Arbery was not a suspect in any crime in Satilla Shores from January 1st of 2019 through February 23rd, 2020.
Your Honor. Earlier, there was an objection to the question about whether this witness had ever investigated the burglaries or any of the enterings at 220 Satilla Drive. And that is right before we took the break. And the state said that
I
this...
object to the speaking objection.
Finish the thought then.
And the state said that this witness had testified he did not investigate any of those break-ins at 220 Satilla Drive. So for that reason, she's now asking him whether he has confirmed that or disconfirmed it. This is not appropriate.
The state just asked him about page 44. We're about to dump everything that's ever happened and see if and I asked him specifically, did you dump it? He said yes. I said, did you find Mr. Arbery as a suspect in any crime? And he said, no, I didn't find Mr. Arbery as a suspect in any of those crimes.
That's on the record, so what's the question now?
So the question now is, now I can't remember what my question was.
Well, that probably solves the objection.
All right, I'll move on.
It's sustained then.
Thank you.
It's getting late. All right, okay. All right, and then I'm going to direct you to page 43.
I'm there.
All right. Once again, Mr. McMichael's talking about that my son had a missing pistol. I'm pretty certain this guy, well, I don't know for a fact, and I have no reason to think that he did it. Is that what he said?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So he doesn't know this for a fact and has no reason to believe he did it with regard to the missing pistol. So in contrast to what Mr. Sheffield put up, we've got probability, maybe, possibility, hunch, logic, intuition, speculation, and if. These
Yes,
are all
ma'am.
the things he's telling you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. He didn't provide you with any concrete, specific evidence or facts at all about the neighborhood and what was going on with it, except for the open unsecured construction site at 220 Satilla Drive, right?
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
And he was able to tell you about that place, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So it wasn't anything keeping him from giving you specifics because he gave you that specific.
Meeting, Your Honor, there's several questions.
I may have one moment. I will go ahead and pass the witness, Your Honor.
It was Gregory McMichael first.
Yes, just to recross. Just briefly, Investigator Marcy, I promise. You've been in law enforcement, remind me, how many years now?
Over 10 years.
Okay. So you are very well familiar with the concept of probable cause, are
Yes.
you not?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to object to this entire line of questioning. We're going to talk about probable cause with this officer. Once again, a legal concept to be given to by the court, and I object on that basis.
Let's get to the question.
You're familiar with the concept of probable cause.
Yes, sir.
And in your own work in law enforcement, you have developed probable cause to suspect people of crimes on many occasions, have you not?
Yes, sir.
And in many of those occasions, your probable cause allowed you to conduct an arrest of the person,
Yes, sir.
charge them with a crime,
Yes, sir.
and then let prosecutors determine whether to charge or not.
Yes, sir.
And some of those times, your probable cause turned out to be the end of the case. There were no charges. The case was over. Sometimes.
I don't know the disposition of all of my cases. I know some have been I've dismissed one myself when I found new evidence.
Right.
Um,
In other words,
and generally, I would say yes, I guess.
and generally what?
Generally, I would say yes, I guess. I don't, as far as felony cases especially, I don't know the disposition of all of them. They're not reported back to us.
Well, the point is this. You develop reasons based on information that you turn into probable cause to make an arrest.
Yes, sir.
And sometimes that's the end of the case, and sometimes it goes on to prosecution. That's the way it works, right?
In general, yes, sir.
So in this interview with Greg McMichael, you're talking to him knowing that he also was in law enforcement.
Yes, sir.
And because you knew that, did you make the assumption about him that he also understood probable cause?
Objection, speculation, and relevancy is to an assumption made by this officer about anything Greg McMichael knew or understood.
I'll go with your ruling, Your Honor, whatever it is.
That's sustained.
Okay. Well, so when the state just went through words with you like logic, possibility, hunch, intuition, they left out lead. You also told in your interview with Mr. McMichael that you thought it could be a lead, that he had a hunch and you called it a lead and he agreed with you. You remember that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if, and I don't think, and so forth. He also told you, did he not, that he was certain about some things, like on page 44, you still have your transcript?
I do. I'm on 44.
Page 44, line 1. He was telling you, I think there's other houses that they're pretty certain this guy's broken into. Certain. The guy he's talking about is Ahmaud Arbery, right?
I think there's other houses that they're pretty sure this guy being Mr. Arbery. Yes, sir.
Okay. And he called him a prime suspect at one point.
Yes, sir.
All right. And a suspect would be basically somebody you suspect of having committed crimes, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you, sir. That's all I have.
Sorry, you were asked about investigating crime in the neighborhood to determine whether or not Mr. Arbery was involved in those crimes, was the question that you were asked, correct?
Reviewing the cases to see if he was a suspect
Reviewing
is
the
what
cases.
I recall. Yeah. So looking at the cases that we have in Satilla Shores
Okay.
prior to the incident and seeing if he was listed as a suspect or could be a suspect. Yes, sir.
All right. Did you review the burglary case at 405 Holmes Road, Satilla from 7/1/19?
What was the date you had? Was July 1st?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
The 159 Zellwood Drive theft on 12/28/19?
Yes, sir.
The entering auto theft on 135 Zellwood Drive on 12/8/19?
Yes, sir.
And when you say you reviewed this, you're saying you reviewed that something had happened, something was stolen, right?
I pulled up the report and got a broad overview of the general what happened.
But in those cases, there was no arrest made on any suspect.
No, sir.
Yeah, so it's unknown who the suspect was.
Correct.
Okay. The suspicious person call from 7/13/2019 at 230 Satilla Drive, did you review that case?
From 7/13 of 2019.
Right.
What was it labeled as?
Suspicious person call.
The only suspicious I have were in May of 2020. If it was, you know, the case number G20 or G19
Well, how about this? If you're saying you don't have any suspicious person cases that you've reviewed, is that what you're saying, other than the one in May of 2020?
no reports that I reviewed. There may be CAT events, which is a report wasn't done. So I may have information here to say it was closed out in the time,
Yeah.
but
Okay, so there's a suspicious person call on 7/13/19 for 230 Satilla Shores. Did you determine who the suspicious person was?
no, sir, it's closed out. I didn't review the CAT details for that.
And this happens a lot, right? People call the police and say, we see somebody on our property, right?
Yes, sir.
The person has actually taken the time to call 911 because they're concerned or worried or scared,
Yes, sir.
right? And then somebody either comes out and doesn't find the suspicious person, right?
Yes, sir.
Or they can show up and find the suspicious person.
Yes, sir.
right? Okay, so you said you have one suspicious person call for May of 2020. I've got other ones for 2019. Are you saying that you have determined?
Counsel's testifying at this point about what he's got.
It's fine, I'll make a question, Your Honor.
Yeah, well, sustained.
Are you saying that you reviewed the suspicious person case on 7/18/19?
Objection. So right now, facts not in evidence about any of these cases.
Your Honor, the question I'm asking him contains a subject matter and facts in it, and I'm asking him to tell me if he knows about it and did anything about it. The state has opened this door by asking him about his review of crime in the neighborhood and whether he's determined whether any of that crime is related to Mr. Arbery. So I'm following up.
It's sustained. The objection, as I understood it, to the state's direct questioning about particular incidents was that the records weren't certified and didn't know what they were. So without those records, it's sustained.
In terms then of what the state was just asking about whether he made determinations of incidents that Ms. Dunikowski asked him to look at, that he's now testified about. We're not seeking to admit those records. That would be hearsay.
You're testifying to them.
I'm
You
asking
can ask him
if
whether
he-
he's familiar,
Yeah.
what he's familiar with, but
Okay.
you're testifying to records.
Okay.
And,
Are you familiar with the suspicious person's call on 8/23/19?
I'll say, That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh.
So it's sustained for the same reason that your objection to the state was sustained.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. You may step down. I don't need to remind you. You are going to be released for the day, but you are subject to recall.
Yes, sir.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're at a good breaking point for the day. So we're going to go ahead and recess until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Again, during the recess, do not discuss this case amongst yourselves or with anybody else. Don't go looking for any information about the case. Don't let anybody talk about the case in front of you. Again, with newspapers and news feeds, make sure you're not looking at any newspapers, not looking at any news feeds about this case. With those instructions, again, all the other instructions I've given you up to this point, thank you for your time. Thank you for your service here in Glynn County, and we'll see you back tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Have a good night.
All right with the jury.
All right, the jury's clear. You can be seated. Anything from the state before we recess?
Nothing from the state, Your Honor.
Anything from Travis McMichael?
Yes, sir. Just one moment. Thank you. Other than just being able to avail myself to the court to make a record of what the court has sustained the state's objection on, I don't have anything further.
Anything from Gregory?
No, sir.
From Mr. Bryan?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
I'm not going to argue with the court's ruling. The record I'd like to make, Your Honor, is that I think the jury has been left with the impression that this officer has been asked by the state to determine if, in his opinion, and looking into cases involving allegations of criminal activity in Satilla Shores, whether he has determined that Ahmaud Arbery was the person who committed those crimes. And he answered, I have looked into cases through this time period, and I have determined that Ahmaud Arbery was not a suspect in those crimes. What the state has done through that line of questioning has informed the jury that Ahmaud hasn't committed any crime in Satilla Shore neighborhood. What I want to do with this witness is to test the boundaries of his investigation and to ask him about all of the other calls that happened in that time period to establish that he's not credible, or to impeach him with the fact that there are a lot of other issues that were ongoing that the police were called about that he didn't investigate and he doesn't know the answer to. So the state said that the jury is not left with the impression that he's resolved this issue. Also, I wanted to ask him about investigating 220 Satilla Shores as well. So I have a list of cases here that are all suspicious persons cases. I was going to ask them about the date and the address and whether he investigated. My thought is it's admissible, and it's not me testifying, if I ask this officer, did you investigate a suspicious person call at this address on this date? He can say, I'm not aware of that, or I didn't do it. My question is not testimony. I could ask him, were you aware of a suspicious person on this call on this date? And he could say no. But just because the question has details in it and facts in it doesn't make me testifying. So I would like to put on the record, Your Honor, which I think you're giving me the opportunity to do right now, that there was suspicious person call at 230 Satilla. I think I already mentioned that one. There was suspicious person call at 168 Zellwood on 8/23/19. There was suspicious person call on 156 Zellwood on 10/19/19. There was a suspicious person's call on 140 Zellwood on 10/20/19. There was a suspicious person call on 201 Satilla Shores 11/7/19. There was a suspicious person call on 11/7/19 at 201 Satilla. Another suspicious person call on 11/17/19 at 220 Satilla. Another suspicious person call on 11/30/19 at 119 Zellwood. Another suspicious person call on 11/30/19 at 119 Zellwood. That appears to be the same one I just mentioned. There's another suspicious person call on 418 Holmes Road on 12/13/19. Another suspicious person call on 12/17/19 at 219 Satilla Drive, which may be in mistake for 220 Satilla, which we know there was suspicious. Oh, actually it's not. We have a suspicious person call for 220 on 12/17/19, but we also have one at 219 Satilla on the same night and date. Suspicious person call at, it says reporting area Satilla Shores on 1/14/20. A suspicious person call on 1/15/20 at 211 Satilla Shores. A suspicious person call at 2/13/20 at 178 Zellwood. And finally, a suspicious person call on 2/13/20 at 119 Zellwood. Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I'm concerned.
So the record's clear. Based on what?
Sorry?
Based on what?
What do you mean?
You just went through a bunch of,
Oh, these are CAD reports.
okay, are they certified?
Your Honor, if we were seeking to admit them,
Okay.
but they're not.
So,
No, these are what we obtained from the Glynn County Police Department. These are records that we obtained through open records request, through our investigator. We have gotten certifications for a lot of things. We have not gotten, I don't believe, certifications. No, we have not gotten certifications for these. I'm not seeking to admit them into the record. I'm seeking to use them to ask the witness questions. I can, use any document if a witness doesn't remember to refresh, but these are not certified. Sorry, that's the brief answer to your question.
Well, again, it's clear about where I am on it. It's unclear when the witness was on the stand where this was coming from. It was not explained to the court. I'm not sure that my ruling changes at all. But the objection that was made earlier to the state's very similar questions about what the investigator looked at, led the court in the direction we went. So if there's other ways to get that in, you're welcome to do so, but not with this witness, not the way that you were doing it.
Right, and just, may I respond?
Yes.
I appreciate it, Judge. The objection earlier was that he was testifying to conclusions that others made based on their investigation. What I understand he was doing was reading something that somebody else did, and he was going to testify as to what he learned or whatever. My questions were, did you investigate something? Not what did you conclude or what just, are you even aware, sir, that these things, that these were calls in the neighborhood to help the jury understand that he's looked at a very small area of complaint in the neighborhood? That's all.
Mr. Goff.
My concern is with the position put forth by the state. I'm not trying to go down memory lane. That Ahmaud Arbery was not identified as a suspect in any crime in this area. It feels to me that that is opening the door to 404B evidence in this case, particularly when we know of a theft where he was I believe more than a suspect, just up the street. We also know that there were thefts and other break-ins in other neighborhoods in the area. And I don't think the state gets to come in and say that Ahmaud Arbery was not a suspect. First of all, it's misleading. If you don't have any suspect, which is true for most property crimes, then it's a meaningless statement to say that he specifically is not a suspect because he didn't have any suspects. It's not like they actively ruled him out as a suspect. We know that he was not identified for hours, if I recall correctly, after his death. If I recall correctly, the state put in evidence that he was identified by fingerprints at the time. Obviously, if there had been specific attention on him, it wouldn't have taken hours to identify the body. But at the same time, it's misleading the jury for the state to be telling the jury that he had never been identified as a suspect when we all know, because we're familiar with this process, why that means nothing. But now we've put that out there, and either I think it opens the door, or I think the court needs to come in tomorrow and give a curative instruction so that we can dissipate that taint. That is backdoor, and I'm not saying that the state was intentionally trying to do that, but the effect is it's backdoor character evidence in favor of Mr. Arbery. And I'm sitting here frustrated. With all respect, he's not my witness. He never talked to my client. This has all got nothing to do with my client. But again, when it comes to severance issues, my client is taking the spillover of what I'm not questioning to be a legitimate examination. But again, it's coming back on my client in a way that I have no way to remedy or address. And I'm troubled by it. And I would ask the court to ponder overnight the possibility of a curative instruction to put this issue to rest. That or rule that 404B is open, and any evidence that he's a suspect or involved in other thefts, certainly in the time frame in the geographic vicinity, should be admitted.
Let me join on that. There's been mentioned that he's not associated with any of these thefts in that time period. We have witnesses in his neighborhood that will testify that they observed him trying to remove screens on windows and enter into structures, and that he was involved in thefts up the street at the gas station and the grocery store. And so to leave the impression that now the police have not identified Mr. Arbery with any thefts is misleading, and it does open the door.
On behalf of Greg McMichael, we do join, Your Honor, and I also point out that the state has cross-examined two of the witnesses. I'm pulling up my notes. Direct examined two of his witnesses with respect to the amount of crime there was in Satilla Shores. At one point, there was an objection that I made that was sustained when the state was trying to characterize it as a very limited amount of calls that the Baker 9 area would receive. So it's obvious that the state is trying to convey and present as much evidence that they deem proper to the jury that this was not an area under some siege of property crimes, which we're going to be able to show is not the case. Part of that are these reports, and part of that will be the information from those residents themselves that were victims of those crimes, and also the communication that those residents of Satilla Shores had with each other. So for that reason, we do join in Mr. Bryan's motion, and we join as well in the preservation of the objection that Mr. Sheffield made.
Thank you, Your Honor. With regard to page 43 at the bottom, line 23 through 25 into 44 at the top, the state didn't bring this up. The state didn't start this. The state actually didn't tender those sentences before this jury. The defense did. The defense opened this door with this. But we got a missing weapon. We got a guy who breaks in, this house down here, and it's probably, I think, if you'll check with them, I think there's other houses that they're pretty certain this guy's broken into. He's talking about other police officers. Go check with them. They're pretty certain this guy's broken into as well and entering autos. There's been all kinds of damn shit stolen. And Investigator Marcy then says, we're about to dump everything that's ever happened in that neighborhood and see if, and he cuts him off. They opened the door to this statement. They wanted it in that the police knew all about all of this stuff. So what's the state supposed to do? Oh, well, Greg McMichael says the police know all about this stuff and then not rebut it at all. So he says here, I was going to, we're about to dump everything that's ever happened in the neighborhood. And I limited it specifically to January 1st, 2019, because the defense brought out, not the state, about how it went all the way back to 2019. I didn't ask that of any of Parker Marcy at all. The defense did. So at this point, the state's been put on notice that we've got to now address this, something that the state wasn't going to go into in Greg McMichael's statements. So now we've got, it goes back to 2019. So I specifically asked him, January 1st, 2019 through February 23rd of 2020. Did you look at all of this stuff? Because you said you did here. This is part of your investigation. And I want to point out that he's allowed to testify to what he did in his investigation. And he was going to go look to see if Mr. Arbery is a suspect in any of these things. He said he was not. And I left it alone at that, especially after you sustained his objection to me going into specific reports. But they came up on cross and opened this door. And yes, I wanted to make it clear that the police did not have him. I think there's other houses that they're pretty certain this guy broke into. And he's talking about law enforcement. And that is why they were going to dump everything. So we ask you to not allow them suddenly to go into 404B evidence when they're the ones who brought up this narrow issue and left the state in no position except to try and clarify what it was that this officer did in here to clear up this issue, which is action he took. And we asked him about it. Thank you.
Just a brief reminder of the order of events. Investigator Marcy was on direct examination. No defense lawyer had spoken to him yet. When the state asked him, have we asked you to pull all these records from 1/1/19 until 2/23/20? And yes, I have. And he had a sheaf of papers, and then an objection was lodged, etc. It was only later, after the state had already been prepared to do this very thing, apparently, before we ever asked the man a single question, that this became the issue it is now. So it's just not quite accurate that we opened any door when we hadn't even cross-examined him yet, when the state brought this out on direct examination, as I recall.
I think we're arguing two different things, and I understand what you're saying. Mr. Goff, it was your motion, so final word.
Roddy Bryan didn't open any doors. I don't think I've asked a single question all day. I think I made one objection all day. And the court's job here, for lack of a better description, is to ensure that all three defendants get a fair trial, including my client. And I just asked the court to view it not just from the perspective of the McMichael defendants in the state, but from the perspective of Roddy Bryan.
Okay. I'm going to give all of this the perspective of time. Meaning tomorrow morning, I'll put on the record where we are. I've had an opportunity to just go ahead and digest what we got and how we got there. So I understand that addresses all matters then currently before the court. We'll be in recess until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. Thank you, everybody.
Good.